Rocky Top Insider recap. Ryan Shumpert with Ryan Sylvia. Josh Heupel just got done meeting with the media for the first time since the first day of practice. The Vols got done scrimmaging for the first time this fall right behind us. A lot of Josh Heupel coach speak, but a couple interesting notes in there. What were your biggest takeaways, Ryan?
I think obviously you look at the quarterback situation first. That's what everyone wants to know about right now is who's going to play quarterback for Tennessee. Joked, pretty quick that I'm not going to name a starter just yet. But I thought it was partially coach speak, but partially a good sign that he's able to admit that there's still some things they need to work through in terms of communication around the offense, but overall he seemed pretty pleased with it, particularly from Joey Aguilar, who he was asked directly about, who's had a short turnaround to actually get ready for the season and learn the offense and everything, and it seems like he's picked it up well, and they have a couple options. We'll see who they actually go with and what that looks like on game days, but so far it seems like the quarterback competition continues to roar on.
Yeah, I think, one, the sports books, they took it off the board. Josh Heupel joking about he's not going to name the quarterback because he's going to say that every single time until he names the quarterback. I thought it was one of the more interesting things he said today that George Mack, he doesn't anticipate that they're going to whittle it down. I kind of thought that this might be after the first scrimmage. They're about over halfway done with camp, but about halfway done with the fall practice, that this might be a time that if there had been some separation with McIntyre that we really haven't seen run with the ones any, that he might say, all right, it's down to two. It's down to Merkley and Aguilar. We'll still see. I'd be surprised if George McIntyre's the starter, but I did think that was notable.
I think that's exactly it. Would I put my money on George McIntyre being in the top two even and not just being that third guy in the mix? No. But it is a good sign just going forward. Even if it's not this year that he plays, or even if it is this year and it doesn't transpire till later in the year, it seems like they still like what they have in George McIntyre, and going forward, he could be an option. Obviously, he's got that kind of incredible frame. He's 6'5", 6'6". He's putting on the weight. He's showing off the arm at practices here and there. So I think it's still a good sign that he's been productive enough that he's not technically out of the competition yet, and he's still getting some reps here and there, I guess, even though it's been mostly Jake and Joey in the ones.
Yeah, I think that's the struggle for Heupel assessing quarterbacks as a whole. Mike Matthews, he said, did go today. We spotted him in a red non-contact jersey, so the extent of that's a little uncertain. Chris Brazzell didn't go. Braylon Staley didn't go. Already a group Tennessee is thin at. Those are two projected starting receivers, maybe a third one that was a little bit limited. In a room they're already thin. So, how do you judge what you're seeing from the quarterbacks when it's kind of uncertain of what those guys are doing? But I think especially for McIntyre, as we've seen in practice, he's throwing to a lot of, they're not walk-ons anymore. Former walk-ons, guys that would be projected as walk-ons. Do we see him get any more reps with main guys? I think for it to become real that he's in this job, we want to hear about it or see him throwing to Travis Smith, throwing to Mike Matthews, throwing to Darius Jackson.
It is a little bit almost of a double-edged sword, though, when you look at the receiver room and how you're judging quarterbacks based off of it. Because on one hand, maybe you get a better look if you're throwing to the Mike Matthews and the guys that are projected to start. But if you're looking at someone like George McIntyre, who's maybe not able right now to run with the Travis Smith Juniors and those guys, maybe you get a better look on how he can do in tighter windows and when things aren't breaking his way, because of course in SEC games it's not always going to be pretty and you're going to have to kind of make things happen. So maybe you do get a different look at some of those guys, even if you're not fully healthy at receiver right now.
Yeah, and it's probably, we didn't get updates on which defense backs didn't go today. We imagine Jermon McCoy did not. We imagine Rick Gibson didn't, as he has not practiced the last few days for Tennessee, at least when we've been out there. And then Colton Hood in a red non-contact jersey. So some of that stuff probably evens out, gives more opportunities. But Boo Carter, a guy that was out there today, and a good sign as he continues to progress forward for Tennessee.
Yeah, Heupel's still kind of saying it's a day-by-day thing. You'll see exactly what that looks like in terms of what he does on the offensive side of the ball. Feels like that was already almost an uphill battle to start with, and kind of having to go through not being a full participant and working his way up to that. It feels a little unlikely that he's fully there, but the numbers show that, maybe there is some opportunity there, even if it isn't as obvious as it once was. But great sign for Tennessee secondary that he's there. Great sign that Jermon McCoy, although it's doubtful he participated today, that he's doing some individual work at practice yesterday. Tennessee secondary, and really the defense as a whole. I know we spend most of the time talking about quarterbacks, and it's kind of the same situation in the actual press conference. But the defense should be really good for Tennessee again, and that could be the reason that Tennessee, even if the offense isn't clicking like it was last year when they were struggling to score in the first half at a lot of times, and they're still winning games, it could be a similar story this year if the defense does live up to those standards.
It's kind of an interesting dynamic with Boo Carter where, before everything went down, it's kind of like you would wanted to hear about him playing on offense. That would be a good sign. Now it's almost, to me, at least in the short term, kind of a bad sign. If they need him out there, he's happy to go. So that's the gist of it. Anything else that stood out to you today?
I mean, it's really just you kind of lock in on the quarterbacks and the defensive side of things. Heupel seems like in a good mood if you're trying to read between the lines, I guess. He didn't seem like he was too upset or angry about things. It felt like he was relatively satisfied with what the offensive line did, with all the turnaround there, with what the entire scope of things on the defensive side looked like. So sometimes I guess you could catch Heupel after these and you can kind of maybe tell that he's not exactly pleased with what happened, but just overarching his attitude, coming in with a smile, cracking a couple of jokes. It seems like for the most part he's happy. Of course, that film study is going to reveal some things maybe you don't see on the sideline, but overall it seems like he was pretty satisfied with how things went in the stadium.
Center competition still ongoing. Some completely different players. What he said about Star Thomas from the spring to now, I thought that was interesting. But that'll be it for us today at RTI Recap. Plenty tomorrow. We'll be back with the Rocky Top Insider Press Pass, so a lot more details into Fall Camp Week 2 for Vols.